All right, today we're going to get behind the wheel for a deep psychological dive into Martin Scorsese's masterpiece, Taxi Driver. This whole film really boils down to one deeply unsettling question. What happens when that feeling of isolation just curdles into rage? And to even begin to answer that, we've got to look at the man at the center of it all, Travis Bickle, who is without a doubt one of the most iconic and disturbing characters in the history of film. So where does all this begin? Well, for Travis Bickle, it all starts with this crushing, all-consuming loneliness. I mean, think about his situation. He's a Vietnam vet, but that past gives him no community, no brotherhood. He drives a taxi all night long, but his chronic insomnia means he never, ever gets a break. He's literally surrounded by millions of people, but he has no friends, no real purpose, and every single time he tries to connect with someone, especially with the women in the film, Betsy and Iris, it just crashes and burns. It just reinforces how utterly alone he is. It's like he's a ghost haunting his own life. And this loneliness, this profound loneliness, it pushes him to try and escape. But here's the thing. He's not trying to run away from the city. He's trying to run away from his own mind. You know, there's this great quote from the philosopher Blaise Pascal. He basically said that the reason we're always looking for distractions is because it's just too painful to sit alone with our own thoughts. And that idea, it is absolutely key to understanding Travis. So while most people might distract themselves with, TV or hobbies, Travis's distractions are much darker. We're talking alcohol, drugs, and really his job itself. That endless night driving, it's not about the money. It's about creating noise, just anything to avoid the silence and the absolute torment of being alone inside his own head. And the irony here is just so thick, right? His job puts him right in the middle of everything, constantly surrounded by people, yet he's trapped in this little metal bubble. He's just watching their lives play out in his rearview mirror. He is always on the outside looking in, an observer, never a participant. But of course, the escape doesn't work. The loneliness is still there, just festering. So what do you do when you can't escape yourself? Well, you try to become someone else entirely. Since he can't connect and he's desperate for some kind of purpose, his broken psyche latches onto this new, totally distorted idea. He's going to be a hero. You know, the psychologist Carl Jung actually had a name for this. He called it the hero archetype. It's this deep primal drive that many people have to be a rescuer, to fix what's broken and save the day. And for a guy like Travis, who has absolutely nothing, this fantasy, this idea of having a grand purpose, it becomes his everything. And you can literally watch him construct this new identity, piece by piece. First, he picks his targets, the women he decides must be saved. Then he puts together the costume, the guns, the military boots, and of course, that iconic mohawk. And finally, he gets ready to take on the villains in this story he's invented for himself. It's a pattern that is frankly scarily familiar today, isn't it? But why this obsession with violence? I mean, why that path? To really get that, we have to dig a little deeper, down to the real root source of his instability. See, Travis's psyche wasn't just shaped on the dirty streets of New York. It was forged in the jungles of Vietnam. And that unprocessed trauma from the war, that's the real engine driving this whole crisis. His symptoms are just a textbook case of post-war trauma. You've got the chronic insomnia, his quick turn to violence, that complete lack of motivation, and this deep, hollowing existential dread. The military gave him structure, it gave him purpose, and then it was all just ripped away, leaving this massive void. He's a soldier without a war, so what does he do? He goes looking for a new one. And this might be the most chilling detail of the whole film. That mohawk, it wasn't just some random punk rock haircut. No, it was a visual cue used by some soldiers in Vietnam right before embarking on a suicide mission. So in his mind, his final violent act, it's his last mission. So you've got all these threads, right? The loneliness, the hero complex, the war trauma, and they all come crashing together in the film's shocking and unbelievably ironic finale. The film plays with fate in such a fascinating way. Okay, so his plan A was to assassinate a politician. If he'd pulled that off, what would he be called? A terrorist. But he fails, so he moves on to plan B, the brothel. And because he ends up killing pimps to save a young girl, the newspapers hail him as a hero. His entire public legacy, how the world sees him, it all comes down to a roll of the dice. Pure chance. And that right there, that moral gray area, is what makes Travis Bickle the quintessential anti-hero. Let's be real, he is not a good guy. He isn't charming, he's not noble. He is a deeply, deeply disturbed person. We follow his story not because we admire him, but because, well, we just can't look away from his struggle. So why are we so drawn to characters like this? I think it's because, unlike those perfect, shiny heroes of old, anti-heroes feel real. They hold up a mirror to our own stuff, our own darker thoughts, our anxieties, those times we've all felt a little lost and disconnected. And the reason Travis Bickle still feels so powerful is because his problems feel like our problems. The idea of being lonely in a crowded city, desperately searching for meaning in a chaotic world, that feeling of just being aimless. Man, that's more relevant now than ever before. Which really just leaves us with one last, kind of haunting question. This movie is almost half a century old, but it hasn't lost any of its punch. So, why is it that when we look at Travis Bickle, we can still, uncomfortably, see a piece of ourselves and our world staring right back at us?